Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another special episode of Big Hairy News. Chewy and I have been in Invercargill today. We got invited to go and be a part of a panel at the NZEI conference down there. And so we did, and that happened like dinner time-ish today. And of course, we didn't have time to prep a show or come back and do a show. So we did a special one-off show for you. I'll talk to you more about the panel and what it's all about shortly, but we are hoping to bring a recording back of that panel with us and maybe either share that to the patrons or maybe put it up as a online episode or maybe play it out on Friday night because we don't normally do Friday nights. But long story short, we've been asked to come down, funnily enough, and speak on behalf of being buffers. So yeah, it's quite an honour. We've been asked to go and have a chat with them, or be a part of a panel, more get asked questions about being buffers. So what we thought we'd do tonight is, for those of you who don't know, the reason we use this label buffer is because Professor Margaret Mutu had a conversation with us earlier in the year, and Chewy asked her the question, what can we as non-Māori do to help Māori, especially in that sort of fight might be the wrong word, interactions with the government, and she said be a buffer. She said kind of stand in the gap and be a buffer between the government. Now, look, to be honest, I've heard from some Māori basically telling me to get bent and they don't need us and we're just being white saviours and and there is a school of thought who does think that. There's another school of thought who goes, we want our allies in whatever area to help us when they can. And through this whole process of doing the buffer thing, we of course realised, well, we don't just have to be buffers in areas of Māoridom. We can be buffers in all sorts of other areas as well. We can be buffers in areas where we're not a part of. We're not a part of that community, but we can still be a buffer in that area. This shirt that I'm wearing is actually one we did 1 month for Palestinians, and we gave money. We donated money to medical aid for Palestinians, actually going into Gaza and helping with them medically at the moment. So when I'm not Palestinian, we're not living in that area, but we can be a buffer. We can be in between the people and try and help in whatever way we can. So that's what it's about. So what I thought we'd do for you tonight is I'm going to replay that Margaret Mutu interview, all based around what we're doing today, and also it's a great message to hear. That will come second. What's coming first, I'm very, very excited. Lucy Lawless has been very kind to us as a show. She's tweeted us out numerous times. She's recommended us to people. She's just an absolute lovely bloody person and has been very kind to us. Lucy has had her first directing role in a documentary on Margaret Moth. Margaret Moth was a journalist, New Zealand journalist, a camera woman, the first TVNZ female camera woman, and she also was a war correspondent. She was a camera operator in war. And if you think of any kind of big conflict in the 90s, whether it was Saudi Arabia, whether it was Rwanda, whatever, she was likely there operating a camera. Seems to be the bravest person out of any camera operator in the history of the world. And Lucy did a documentary on her. Now, Friday of last week, I got about 40 minutes or so to sit down with Lucy to talk about that documentary. It's amazing. You must check it out when you get a chance to see it. But the first part of this show tonight is going to be my chat with Lucy Lawless about her documentary on Margaret Moth. Enjoy. Welcome to the show, Lucy Lawless. Lucy, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, look, we're very excited to have you. We are speaking to you today because of a documentary that you have just directed.
War is an amazing field. Part of me wanted out. I was sick of it. But Margaret didn't seem to feel the same.
On Kiwi female news camera woman, Margaret Moth. Amazing movie. Yeah, what drew you to the story? Why did you want to do a documentary on Margaret Moth?
I had no interest or intention of directing anything. And I got this email, a cold call one day from Margaret Moth's best friend, Joe Duran. And he said, look, I've got a suitcase of Margaret's memories. Do you want to make a film about her?
Wow.
And this weird alchemy happened inside me, and my mind went right back to 1992 when we were all watching the news. I don't know if you are cognizant of this moment where Margaret Moth was shot in New Zealander, CNN shot, it was so shocking. And I was obviously fixated to the TV, and everything I knew about Margaret must have come from that report. And I immediately wrote back and said, yes, I will find the money. I will find the producers. We will get this made. And then I hung up and just went, holy shit, Lucy, you have no business saying you can do these things. You know, like, I've never done this before.
Well,
And
if this is the first time view, I want to see more. It's a pretty good first time effort, I got to say.
oh, well, thank you. I mean, you don't do it alone. You know, I have producing partners and editors and a researcher, and the people that you interview are collaborators in a way, you know. So, yeah, I think where my biggest contribution was about attitude to all the players and what constitutes the truth as I see it. You know, some people
Right.
said some stuff that I just knew with other data I had coming that that's not actual. It's not fair for me to put that in. That's not right. You know, or this person has an axe to grind, and I know, you know, so that's where my sense of my deal with Margaret lay in that I would only tell what I believe to be the absolute truth without
Right.
fear or favor, and not sugarcoat it too much, you know, or at all.
Because surely that lifestyle is a little bit of a, have you seen the size of the fish I caught? You know, that must be a part of that world, you know, the size of the fish that I caught somewhere. That must, you know, those stories that come out from within wars and within those areas must do that at some stage.
I've seen that only from one person.
Okay.
Who was big noting. I think looking back, he wanted me to make a film about him, but it's like, sorry, the New Zealand Film Commission is not making a film about you, brother. Anyway, the truth is so big that they cannot possibly reduce it to mere words or mere concepts, because it's so complicated, and you have to be living there 40 years to get a sense of the whole organism, like conflict as we see going on in the world today.
I'm interested in all of the footage that you used. Like there was one bit of footage quite close to the start where a camera person, because I don't know if it was Margaret or not, was on the back of a truck and people were shooting up into the air. Is that all Margaret Moth footage, or is some of it Margaret Moth with other kind of pertinent footage from that incident interspersed?
No, some of this stuff, especially in the beginning, it's clear. Some of it is clearly from the incursion into Ukraine.
Yep.
Margaret's been dead since 2010, right?
Of course.
So it's not, because he's talking about war generally, so we felt we could do that. We struck a lot of problems with Margaret's footage because in those days, camera people didn't get credits. I don't know if they do today. They didn't get credits. Plus, they were shot on this massive, like, beta tapes. So they're editing them in the field, and they only send the finished package back over satellite to CNN headquarters or whatever. The rest is either taped over or destroyed. They could not store it all. So when I went looking, it was really frustrating, and CNN really tolerated a lot of irritating queries from us out of sheer love of Margaret, thank God. But that was the reality. So I tried to make sure that all the footage comported with her press passes and her visas, and things that I knew she was at, like incidents I knew she was at. You can hear her voice, but no, there's probably a lot of other people's work. I knew that. I admit it.
Yeah.
But in order to take you on a great ride, that's what I chose to do.
Do you know one thing I was surprised with? I was surprised, it's a bit silly, but I was surprised with how much footage there was of her shooting footage. There was lots of photos and film footage and all of her filming. Is there any story to that?
The stuff, there's so little. I'm so shocked to hear you say that.
Okay.
What we did have was stuff after Margaret had been shot that was done for the Cameron Bennett and the Holmes show.
Right.
They went to a lot of trouble to go to Istanbul and film her, even got her doing some stuff in Afghanistan. But evidence of her on the job was really scant. Her talking, there's only one thing of her talking before she was shot, and that's when she's about to jump out of an airplane, and they filmed her. I think that's actually Christchurch. I think that's Christchurch when she was jumping out of hot air balloons with a parachute.
Yeah. I was going to ask that question. I mean, maybe it's a redundant question, but completely addicted to adrenaline? Is that what the sense you got of it? Just an adrenaline junkie? Or is it more about the job and what she wanted to put through that lens?
I think it's a little bit too easy to say that. It's not that. I think that she was so hungry for sensation and to fill her boots with something. I heard this word on a podcast. My husband said to me today, "What does that word mean, imago?" And I think it is when your demon or the things you didn't get as a child affect your behavior later in life. And I think it was something maybe like that, where there was so little love and nurturance in her upbringing that she was like filling herself with just crazy experiences.
Could it also be the idea of feeling anything is better than feeling nothing? If you're getting nothing from your parents,
it could be, yeah, that's
feeling
nice.
so,
like
even
that.
if it's fear or adrenaline or love or sex or whatever it is better than. I mean, they talk about kids who sometimes act out, and they're like, sometimes the kids who act out, maybe they've got stuff in their past where they haven't received what they needed from an adult figure,
Right.
and so receiving even negative stuff is better than receiving nothing at all.
Right. And I think she saw it all as wholly positive. I don't think she saw herself as ever hurting anybody. She's just going to, fill her boots. But it was a little bit like feeding a racehorse delicacies. It was not really going to. It sustained her for a long time. But when she discovered war, that was the be all and end all for her. And I think through all that, through war and through the trauma of war, she found a way to live a life of service instead of just a life of consumption and excess.
It made me think as well about the difference between the 90s and today when it comes especially to war footage. Do you have any sense, or from talking to people who knew Margaret, what she would think of seeing footage today? I mean, we see things happening in Gaza, but more often than that, you see the effects of war from Gaza from someone's cell phone that's gone onto the internet. Yeah. There's no entry to getting these footages out there anymore. Not like they used to. They have to. Do you get any sense as to what she or the people around her would think of how war, quote unquote, war is reported today?
Well, I don't get the sense that any of them resent it, because in my albeit limited experience, the people I've met in the last 3 years through this job, they believe so much in the purpose. The reason they're there is to tell the stories of the non-combatants of war. So if the non-combatants are sending up evidence, they're all for it. I'm not saying they're saints or anything, but they are trauma bonded to that job.
That's an interesting phrase. Trauma bonded.
So when something kicks off, like the day that we talked to Christiane Amanpour was the day that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Wow.
And she and Joe Duran, who were both, we were interviewing them remotely. They were in London in the Margaret Moth boardroom, actually.
All right.
At CNN in London. And they were on tenterhooks. It was very generous and a lot of self-control for her to sit there and give us 40 minutes of her time, because those people are scintillating because they know that their colleagues are facing incredible hardship and possibly death.
Probably speaks to what she thought of Margaret as well. Like, they should give you that time about Margaret on that day.
Yeah, all entirely for Margaret. Yeah, they had a lot of regard for, not just for Margaret, they have a lot of regard for one another. I was quite impressed by them, actually.
You talk about telling the stories of the non-combatants. I've written down some quotes from the doco. One that said, "You can't cover war remotely. It's about people." That was like a really impacting one. And there was another one. The BBC female camera operator said, "If you don't film, things carry on. If you do film, things can carry on, but they can change." And I think it was Christiane Amanpour saying what was seen through Margaret's lens, literal lens, was something that helped change the course and made people look at the actions of war to potentially help in the long run.
I think they're really heroic. What's done with their images at the other end, how it's extruded out through the network is a whole other question. But those people, I've settled on this point that there is no self-interest in what they do. Wow. They just live to be there and to tell the truth, even if it means that they could die. I know that they feel they'll be at peace with that.
Do you feel like after this, and you've just said 3 years, do you think like you know Margaret? Like, do you understand her?
I don't really. I mean, I don't feel like I know her.
Yeah.
I feel very connected to her, but I don't feel like I know her because I can't relate to just about any of the choices that she made in her life. She's
Sure.
a different kind of being, and I don't know if that is part of a personality thing or a genetic thing or something to do with, I don't know, some sort of disordered thinking on her part or mine. you know?
Yeah.
So she is, to me, a real sphinx. I think she'd like that too. She had a real thing about Egyptian cats and things, and that's why
Right.
she designed her makeup that way, to look like an Egyptian cat. And yeah, she's a sphinx.
I wonder if it's like the no regrets kind of vibe that you got from what came through the screen at least. I wonder if that was always the way. Like, I think she either said or someone retold the story about I'm not a breeder, having to getting her tubes tied and having to get, I guess, medical permission to do it. I wonder if that sat with her all the way through
Judicial.
her life. Like, yeah, completely.
She
Got
went.
got towards the end of her life and went, nah, that was great. I don't need that. That was not a part of who I was.
Yeah, but here's one thing that I feel that I know about her. Her friends may disagree. I don't know. This is what I feel I know about her, is that she's a concrete thinker,
Right.
a really concrete thinker. So, like, I don't know if you'd talk philosophy. I don't think she'd have any time. She would find that like she had zero time for religion, nor did her father,
Right.
nor did her siblings, for talk about spirituality. I'm not sure where she would sit on philosophy, but because she read all that stuff, she was a voracious reader, but she just saw that stuff as so much indulgence, and even things like PMT or hangovers. She felt like that's completely craven self-indulgence, and she had no time for it. Didn't suffer them. She was different.
It's funny. I mean, I don't know if this is accurate to say or not, but there's this idea that kind of men are a bit more analytical and women are a bit more logical. Not that it has to be that, because it's a spectrum. And it talks about how well she got on with all the army blokes and how well she got on with General Schwarzkopf of all people. And I wonder if she had sort of a male-esque
concrete thing.
Yeah. Thinking.
She's a bit of a dude. I asked somebody, was she a bit of a dude? They were like, yeah, I think maybe she was kind of a dude.
Yeah.
I think it was that concrete thinking suited her down to the ground. She didn't want anybody like blubbering, or no, poor me. She didn't get poor me as a child. If she fell over and got a, what in America they call a boo-boo, it would be just like, well, just watch out next time, you idiot, kind of thing. I don't know about idiot, but zero nurturance.
Yeah. So maybe the idea of no kids was actually the best conversation, zero nurturing.
Yeah, well, I think she felt like she might not have it or didn't have it in her to give, but she did things like animals. She had 25 cats, which poor old Joe Duran inherited. And like she would cry about a pussy cat who was under a tank in war. I mean, it's not going to get squished. It's just the tank's just sitting there, but she's going to get under that tank and save the pussy cat, sort of thing. And also very lovey-dovey with her boyfriends in a way that shocked her family and friends. They'd never would have thought she was capable of that kind of woody woo kind of stuff.
Well, there was a scene in the movie where one of her boyfriends broke down in tears and said, you sat down with her and when you got up, you always took something away. I mean, that shows nurturing, the giving of herself as the person's walking away.
Yeah, she did. And she kind of put him through art school in a way, but an unofficial art school. Like she taught people stuff, and she really brought a lot of young women along in the business. She would always stop and explain things. And so, yeah, there was a kind of nurturance, but it was more in the way of a teacher than come here and let me, stick a plaster on it.
Yeah. You showed some art within the documentary, like scratchy scriggle drawings. Were they hers or were those just representations?
No, those are hers.
Because they're amazing.
They're amazing. Jeff
Yeah.
had them in his attic, and actually Joe who was her soulmate, they were best friends, platonic but best friends. Was shocked he'd never seen anything quite like that before from her, and yeah, and I really went digging for the origin story of those drawings, but I asked her siblings, so did you have stairs in your house? Did you have a grandfather clock? They're like, no, no, no. And I was trying to find, there had to be the kids under the stairs that she drew is so creepy. I was like,
Yeah.
there has to be some horrible kind of abuse somewhere. I could never find it. I don't actually believe that she was sexually abused, but your mind wants to go there when you see those pictures because they're so horrifying. 1970s era drawings reminds me of this TV show. Remember that Midnight's Children or something, where that little girl would draw a house in the 1970s show? It's not Midnight's Children, something like that, and then it would come true. She'd enter her anyway. It was like that, just creepy drawings that Margaret did. And and Jeff gave those to me, so it was amazing.
I trained to be a teacher, and I did a section at Starship Hospital. And as a part of the section, so for people who don't know, you go out and you do like time working at schools. In the Starship Hospital, there's a school, and I did a section at the Starship Hospital. And one of the days they took me to the part of the hospital that were with kids who had really serious mental health issues, depression and suicidality and all that kind of stuff. And one of the teachers showed me a picture that a girl had drawn on the day she arrived, and it looked like Margaret's pictures, all black, all dark, it was a clown, like the clown from hell. And then he showed me the picture of the clown when she left, and it was the big red nose, purple hair, all colours. It's really interesting to look at this kid's journey through their own mental health from when they arrived to when they left, from dark and under the stairs and horror-like to kind of it was just, it's fascinating to see what's behind the art, eh?
Yeah. It was just how she saw childhood. It was something not to be replicated.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you get your tubes tied, you can't be responsible for replicating it, can you?
Yeah. I think she kind of didn't want to turn into her mother.
Do you think her parents didn't, it's kind of said out, I don't know if it's blatant, but it sounds like the parents are saying, we would rather not have had kids. Yeah, if the pill was around, we wouldn't have had you. So they actively did not want children.
No, and he would keep knocking the mother up. That's how she felt, that every time she nearly got to leave, when the kids went to school, she could nearly leave, that he would knock her up. That's the way that she expressed it, the mother. But there was lots of suicide in the mother's history. Her own mother had committed suicide. And I would have liked to have gone into that, but ultimately the story's about Margaret. You've just got to draw a line. But really interesting history of neglect and abandonment. And Margaret was just it stops here.
Wow. Looking and studying and reflecting on Margaret, it did make me think, as I was watching the documentary, hearing about her family, going, how much are we made up of nature versus nurture? Like, how much of this concrete thinking for this person, how much are they just naturally, I said analytical, but concrete thinking, that's the way it is, and how much because of their upbringing of abandonment and non-connection creates that? I mean, I don't really have a question around that, but I just found it a fascinating thought about, would she have been a different person in a different family, and what would that have looked like?
Well, who the hell am I to say? I would, okay, since we're just shooting the shit here, and clearly we cannot possibly know, I would say she would be, because she would be more at ease on Civvy Street. Do you know what I mean? Like, there wouldn't be so much to fight, so much to run away from. She was very proud of being from New Zealand, but she stayed away for like 40 years because of the family thing. And they're such nice people. I love all the Wilson kids that I met. I love them one-on-one, but the damage, they're all siloed off from one another because of this dearth of love.
Mm.
You know, do you remember Romanian orphans back in the was it the 80s? The story about kids and orphans in Eastern Europe who had never been cuddled, so they never developed the capacity for empathy and things.
Yeah.
Something like that. There's some watered down version of that. Kids who just
Yeah.
don't get cuddled.
It made me think as well that like there's a part of what makes us who we are is also how people treat us. And I was thinking when it's like she rejected the blonde hair, blue eyes, and she went to the dark eyes and black hair, what was she putting out there, and how much of that was a part of how people were then treating her? Like just in general, it's, yeah, I just think, I mean, like it's funny you say she wouldn't have a bar of philosophy, because I think like the philosophical conversation around Margaret Moth would be fascinating and what's going on there.
I don't know that. She might have been able to talk philosophy, but certainly not spirituality.
Right.
Zero.
Yeah.
You know, she encountered a lot of misogyny and crazy stuff in Dunedin, I'm afraid. Stuff which would have been fascinating to put in the film, but I just couldn't prove it was true, and it would be definitely impugning the names of a few formerly high-profile individuals.
Right.
Yeah, and also the people who told it to me didn't want to be responsible for telling it themselves, you know. So
Yeah, fair.
I'm not an investigative journalist. I'm
Yeah.
I'm presenting people telling their own story, and I think they would like me to have told it, but that would require a lot more resources than I had.
I mean, what else did you leave out? What ended up on the, well, was there anything, I should say, that ended up on the editing floor that you're like, no, maybe I should have included that? Was there anything else?
Lots of stuff. All the New Zealand stuff was really neat. It was, and really fun and really wild. But also it was not debated, that's a word. Other people would said it wasn't true. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I couldn't nail down and go, this is the truth. For example, one of the stories was that at in her locker at TVNZ, some guys would put bloody dolls indicating like menstruation or something in her locker. It's like, okay, now that's a really tasty story. That's like, oh, poor Margaret, how mean the men were in the 1970s, right? But I talked to her New Zealand best friend. He was like, I was there. I'm just telling you, those men are just not like that. I just cannot corroborate that. And I was her best friend. She would have mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
So, for example, things like that. Lots of very tasty, very interesting stuff. But ultimately, we felt that the strongest place to start the story was mystery woman shows up in 1980s Dallas during an oil boom, can remember nothing about her past. Well, that's a lean in. That's a hook. Do you know what I mean? That makes people go, we love people who can't remember anything about their past. So it's really a hunt for who is this woman, and then who is she really? And then who is she now? So it just keeps, it's chercher la femme. And I feel like that's a really important thing for docos about an individual. If you have the individual too available, then there's no tension in it. So you always want the audience sort of leaning in on the hunt, being involved in, hang on, who's telling the truth, who's a reliable witness, you know?
Yeah.
They get to make up their mind what the story is about.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about some of the movie making decisions you made. It's funny because I was watching this and I was thinking, you know, for, I don't know, first half hour, whatever it was, it's all real footage. It's amazing. There's no recreations. And then you had the bit that came out about when Margaret got shot. And when Margaret got shot, you used I'm assuming it was CGI, this bit here that we're looking at on the screen right now.
No, diorama, bro.
Is that actual models?
Diorama, yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that CG or is it actual little models?
It's actual models. And you know what's good is that I happen to be drinking from the cup that inspired the whole thing. I had one of these cups. We were talking about the diorama and, okay, what are we going to do for backgrounds? They're like, can't afford backgrounds. What do you mean? You can afford nothing. Well, what about green screen? So we can, you know, make a horizon or whatever. And they're like, you can't afford it. And I said, what can we afford? They go, a black curtain. And I had this cup and I just went, perfect. Okay. So and they said, you can have 3 colors. 3 colors of what? 3 colors, period. So your people are going to be one color, your buildings are going to be another color. So apart from Margaret, who's a little bit painted there, the others are all sort of a horrible greeny grey color. In Sarajevo, the buildings are grey, and in Lebanon, the buildings are this sort of biscuity color. That's because that's limitation kind of can become style, as you will know well, I think. But
Yeah.
that money, economics were what forced these choices.
Look great. I mean, like, honestly, it made a part of it, because I'm someone who kind of goes recreations. Ugh, don't like recreations. But because you made it so overtly a diorama, and to display it, felt like kind of looking down on the war zone, like a general about to move his things with his big long stick, going, "Oh, this happens there," and so it actually really worked. I really liked it.
That was actually one of the inspirations. One of the producers was like, because it wasn't my idea. Matthews is in love with the war diorama in Canberra. And he was like, make it like that. And I was like, wow, I'm a kid of the 70s. We remember dioramas. It's so old, it's cool again. And my dear friends down at Weta, Richard Taylor and Ben Milsom, they came on board because they have much bigger fish to fry, but I think they really dug the Margaret thing, and they leaned into it and made it possible. I'm so grateful, because it was big. It was a big scale thing. And to make it Sniper Alley look so long, you have to have buildings of different scales, and so it looks like they're far away, even though they're only 20 feet. It looks like they're a kilometre away.
Yeah,
it's clever stuff.
That forced perspective idea.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
After she was shot, and obviously all that came with that, do you think her kind of fear of death dissipated, or do you think that she didn't change? I'm thinking specifically about the story where Hezbollah launches the rockets at the bottom of the building that they're in. All the CNN people go, "Holy shit, let's get out of here." They can't find her because she's gone to the roof, and she's filming to see if the IDF are going to send missiles back. Is this just like a death wish, no fear of anything, or is that just how she always was? And as you're investigating her,
as I'm investigating her, she never had a death wish; she had a life wish.
Okay.
But I think if death was coming for her, she's going to film it. She's going to look you, death, you bitch. I'm going to look you in the eye. You came for me once before. I'm going to film you as you do it. And I think also she thought there was a calculated risk that they wouldn't come back, or they might do a flyover and she'd catch it. But I think she thought, no, she'd probably be okay. But other people made a run for it because, the IDF don't play.
So it sounds like you're saying that she probably in that moment made a calculated risk rather than a death wish.
Oh, Margaret always felt that she was making a calculated risk.
Right.
She would calculate the risk. But some of her colleagues disputed that. But Margaret always, and she was right. The only time she was ever hurt, she was sitting in the back of the van with her colleagues. It wasn't her decision of which way to go that day. That was the producer's decision.
Right.
And it was a fatal one for Margaret.
Gosh, that puts a different spin on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder,
she never was wrong about it.
Yeah.
Never
interesting as well.
On the job. Yeah.
So she didn't have a death wish. Do we have any idea as to what she actually thought about death? Like, even was there a change pre being shot to post?
I can't. It's that concrete thinking.
Yeah.
Element that is why we get hung up on this, because you just can't imagine being so black and white about something like that. But I think she was. And if there wasn't a complete turnaround, it was just that it just strengthened her her desire and her commitment to eating life, just having as much fun and being pleasing herself, which often meant being alone, smoking a cigar and reading a book. She took a lot of time alone, and she pleased herself.
She certainly comes across as someone who lives every day as it's their last, which, in some theory we all should, but she lived that way, and it might have been her last because she was in a war zone. So it did it both ways.
Yeah. I think there's a real piquancy when you know that that you're on borrowed time. I think every day that she had, once she decided to survive her that catastrophic injury, was extra. And I'm sure she loved stealing that time off death, you know.
Yeah, wow. Because there was another part where it talked about, and I'm not quoting it, I'm just, you know, roughhousing it, that she wanted to be where people were doing something wrong, where she wanted to be filming people doing something wrong. So she was always out for the victim, for the vulnerable, for the one that was being hurt and harmed unjustly.
Yeah, there was a line that was taken out that I really regret. It was taken out that she wanted to lift the lid on the military complex. And when we're saying that, the pictures that you're seeing are actually long-range missiles and, you know, Scuds and shit, you know. And yeah, I at the time I was like, oh, I missed that line, but then just things got busy and it never got put back. But so yeah, no.
Because,
but
she also
could see.
But she also had this life where she sat and smoked cigars with General Schwarzkopf, and arguably you could say that wasn't sitting where
concrete,
you know, the vulnerable.
You know, she was not. She would see getting all political and she would see that as so much wankery. Like she would never go and sit with the other journalists at dinner and talk about, you know, the forces, forces that be, and make judgment pronouncements about it. She was not into that at all. She was just about cold, hard truth and showing it. And it was later on that she softened, particularly to the kids of war. That was her focus in the end.
Which is again interesting, based on that I'm not a breeder.
Yeah,
you know,
she found
not
her
maternal
children eventually. Yeah.
If Margaret was still here today, and obviously if she was, she'd be at a certain age, but let's say she was doing her gigs all as she could at her peak for the Israel-Gaza situation, where would she be? Where would she be filming?
Well, you know, she lived in Ramallah.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time there and in Jerusalem, but in Ramallah, because that's where people understood her and she felt comfortable there and valued. And yeah, I imagine she would have first have gone straight to Ukraine and then she would have gone straight back to Gaza and covered that. She just wants the hardcore truth out there and make of it what she didn't care what you made of it. You know, she was not interested in your opinion about anything. She was interested in showing it as it was. There's that concrete thing, you know.
Yeah. Do you know if she ever got kind of pissy with how CNN then treated her photos? Because after she sends it on, like you say, they can do what they want with it. Or is her job done and she's okay with whatever they do?
She would never look at it.
Okay. So
I mean,
she
they
wouldn't
would
even
edit
know.
it in the field.
Yeah.
Well, they would edit it in the field, so they'd know what went out. But that wasn't her concern. She wasn't, you know, generally not part of the editing process, at least not early on. And she was about observing it and shooting it and giving that material to whomever. I don't think she didn't see herself as a saint. You know, she wasn't into that.
She was the eyes on the world. That
a cold eye.
Yeah, but that she was our eyes on the world, ours being the people who weren't over there. And it seems that her primary focus, as you're saying, was being our eyes. This is the footage. Where there was that example of, you know, a crowd of civilians being shot on and all the journalists stuck down and she was the one standing up filming. You know, she was the eyes to send back for the rest of us to see. And that was it. Hey, like it wasn't without fear nor favor. She was the eyes.
That's exactly right. And to be a cipher and not to put a slant on it. And I tried to carry that through with the film, you know, not to put a slant on anything. Just show it as it is and let the audience have their feelings, you know, sift it through their own history and nervous system and come away and hopefully discuss it with the person next to them and have a good chinwag because their experiences don't quite line up.
Lucy, I know that you're kind of politically active. You put out thoughts and ideas of what you think and believe. I wonder if you, because obviously you were more involved in it, like me, were watching some of the footage or sifting through the footage around the Middle East when the IDF trucks were crashing into the CNN vehicles, the TV vehicles, and go, this feels like it could have been filmed last week. What's changed in the last 30 years?
Yeah, shocking, really shocking. When October 7 kicked off, my first thought was, wait, what? How many people are doing what? They took the scale of it kind of blew your mind.
Yeah, insurmountable.
And then my next thought was, oh my God, don't they know what's going to happen? What inevitably happens when, like, that whole thing at Kana was because 2 Israeli soldiers were kidnapped and taken. And, you know, what unfolded, the denouement was, exponential is not the right word. I don't know what it is, but it seemed inevitable that this was going to be so much worse than we could even imagine, and it is worse than any of us imagined.
Do you think that we still get serviced well by our news media with those, cold eyes, no perspective, as we did with people like Margaret Moth? Do you reckon it's the same today?
Yeah, I do. I think they're the same people. I mean, I know they're the same people. I was just sitting with a bunch of them last month. A lot of them are still working. Matthew Chance is in Moscow. He came to the film. He was a great friend of Margaret's, and he, he's been a big voice on what's going on. And good old Cameron Bennett's still doing it, isn't he? He met Margaret a few times. So they are literally the same people.
Yeah. And they still do the news, no fear or favour.
Well, yeah, but those people do. The people who are on the front line, they're not there for the good of their health, are they?
Yeah.
That was part of my secondary desire for this film, is that it would bring some honour to that profession, because those people are amazing.
Yep.
And they are so under threat. They're so disrespected because of how, feel about mainstream media, and rightly or wrongly. But those people are giving it all up to to tell the cold, hard truth. And it's up to us to make up our minds what we're going to do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. In this age of spin, it's fascinating that we still have those people who are at the coalface are doing that no fear or favour journalism.
Yeah, even though there are people out, citizen journalists with their cell phones, you still need people who know how to feed it back, who know how to process it, and are connected to all the other players in the region. And we need them. We need them terribly.
Hey, Lucy, thanks so much for giving us some time today. I just have one more question for you. I'd like to know what lesson or lessons you have learnt from Margaret Moth through this process.
That you don't have to be a perfect person. You don't even really have to be a good person to live a pro-social good life. And then we're not here long. Eat it up. Eat it up. And stop worrying what people think about you. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that goes with Margaret. But she's she might not have been, she was no angel, but there's something redemptive in her story, not just for her but for all of us, that you can learn to leave the world, try to leave the world better for you having been here, or die trying.
It's a pretty nice place to end on. Can we just do this as well? The doco's coming up at the New Zealand International Film Festival. How else are people going to get to see it? Is this going to have a general audience release? Is it going to go to somewhere like Netflix? What's the plan?
Actually, no, it is supposed to have a general release in main centers. I don't know what that means because it's sold to different territories all over the world. So does that mean New York, LA, London, Auckland, Dunedin? I don't know what that means. But anyway, it is going to be in cinemas. But the film festival, it seems like it's going to play pretty widely here. So I'm really thrilled that it's getting some exposure here because we made it. It's made for New Zealanders, about in New Zealand, it's by New Zealanders, and the fact that it's the world sort of scooped it up immediately is amazing. But really, it's for us.
It's
She's
an
our
amazing
least known
story.
famous person.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And thank you so much for sharing it with us being the country. And thank you so much for giving us a bit of time today to talk about it. I can't wait to see it again. I watched it by myself yesterday. And I told my partner all about it. And she's like, I want to see it. And I went, I want to see it again too. So
It's great in the cinema. It's a whole different experience because the sound design is very involving and works on quite a gut and just subliminal level. It's quite, it's a cool thing about cinema.
Congratulations on your first role in directing. Do you have plans for more?
Yeah, oh God, yeah. I mean, I've got plans. I've got plans up the wild, man. I'm working on 3 scripts at the moment. I want to work with actors now that I'm like, okay, all right, okay. Got this. I understand the story thing now, but now actors is what I understand really well. It's hard to find it's hard to find anything that wants to be funded. It's a bun fight, but you got to be up for it, and you got to be a powerhouse like Margaret, and just storm on.
Yeah,
it's the only chance you have of making anything happen at all.
Some concrete thinking needed.
Yeah. Hey,
Hey, Lucy.
Did you hear that Jeff died?
No.
Jeff died at Christmas. He never got to see the film.
Oh.
But he was such an important part of it, and he was became a very dear friend through this process. And it made his life. It made his life, and it put his little heart back together again.
Oh, nice.
And I think he just,
Because that idea about when you spend time with Margaret and she leaves, you keep a little bit, but I guess you also give a little bit away. It's kind of a transfer to and fro. And I imagine, with no criticism, the kind of life she lived of in and out might have taken big parts and given big parts depending on what part of the cycle you're in, a leaving or a comings part of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to think on that.
Yeah.
I think she tried to prep people to not, have unrealistic expectations, but maybe she had some herself. I don't know. That's the fun thing, that you get to make up your mind who she really was.
Yeah. Well, look, congratulations again. It's a fantastic movie. Everyone should definitely see it. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Love your work. You and Chewy, love your work.
Thanks to that, Lucy. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being a part of this amazing documentary. I was lucky enough to see a part of it because of needing to see it to have the interview, and I'm going to go see it again at the cinema. In the cinema, obviously, it's soundscoped. It's a very, very different vibe and different feeling from me watching kind of an advanced preview on my screen just there. So I'm going to go see it again, and you should see it too. It's amazing. It's an amazing story. Something else that's kind of amazing, if you haven't heard about it yet, we are looking to get a new theme song. Last week, we were talking about AI and how AI is dangerous, whatever, it might not be the right word, for those who are in the creative arts. There are people who are being replaced at the moment by AI. To which someone pointed out to us, which we love, someone made for us an AI copy of our theme song, which we're using. We like it, right? But what we thought was, if we're going to we should put our money where our mouth is. So we said, how about we do this? Let's offer $250 to someone to design for us a new theme tune. And then someone in the chat who was watching live said that they would match that donation. So in other words, it's $500 for somebody to design for us a theme tune. Now, if you go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Big News, you will see the criteria around it. I'd love to show it to you now, but at the time of recording, I haven't written it yet. But this will make me write it in a minute. and then it'll be up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Big Hairy News, or my Twitter feed, Pat Brittenden, yeah, that's my name. I'll also put it as a document on the YouTube channel as well. The criteria around winning the $500, understanding it's a competition, so you might put something together, you might spend time on it, effort on it, and it may not win, which means you may get nothing for it. So just being aware of all the conditions around it, and that's what we'll do. So you should go and check that out. And whilst you're going and checking that out, or we're bookmarking it to check it out later on, let's check out that interview that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's a repeat of the conversation with Professor Margaret Mutu, where this whole buffer conversation come up. Here it is. As you know, we've been talking a lot about Māori issues over the start of all of last week and this week, coming up to Waitangi Day. We had Debbie Ngāraupaka on last week. We talked about the kingitangi hui. We are talking about ratana, and we are going to be talking and continue to talk about what's upcoming with Waitangi. A lot to do with the relationship or non-so that this government is building or not building with Māori. And so we thought we'd get on. We love being the dumbest people in the room, so we love getting smart people on that have a lot to say and know far more than us for us to learn from. So we want to welcome to the show from Auckland University, Professor Margaret Mutu. Margaret, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Kia ora, nice to be with you guys.
We always kind of start our conversations, and thank you so much for joining us, by just kind of throwing you the ball. You know what, I mean, you were at a hui all day today. I saw some tweets going around about the kind of things you were talking about today at the hui, to kind of just throw you the ball and go, is there anything that you want to start us off with, understanding that we're looking at Māoridom in general, and particularly what this current government is doing, treating, feels like a bit of a toxic relationship, and what's going on with this government and Māori at the moment, and how Māori are being treated, and how I guess the taonga that Māori hold is being disrespected by this government. So you're welcome to kind of start the conversation. Do you got anything you want to just kind of to nutshell for us about what you're seeing at the moment?
What I'm seeing is that Māori are actually coming together. That's that kotahitanga thing we've been talking about. The need for us to come together, and it's about coming together to protect ourselves from the assaults that are coming in, the racist stuff that's happening to us out on the streets, in the supermarkets, in the shopping malls, particularly those of us, our women, in particular those carrying the moko kauai, are finding themselves just being arbitrarily, abused in the streets. So, but that's sort of the direct stuff. There is a need for us to protect ourselves, so we are coming together. So in some ways, I can see a positive side of this, where we've been sort of jabbed at so badly that we're just coming together and going, right,
yeah,
now we've got to get our act together.
Yeah.
And we've got to
There's been lots of commentary in the last week that who knew that David Seymour would bring together Māori so well, which is what he wasn't intending on doing. But what a great job he's done at bringing Māori together.
No.
You talk about coming together. The Kingitanga hui, did it start there? What was that like? Because you were there.
Yes. So it was, the way it was run was just so good. That's all I can say. What it did was it laid the ground rules before we got there, and it said, please come in peace, please come to find solutions, and let's try and work together. And then they put up a couple of speakers, because in a hui, as you know, you get the people who do the formal whai kōrero at the beginning. They will lay down sort of the tone of the hui. They will set it. And it was really clear there that we had come together as one, and we needed to sort out and find solutions. And then they had two very, very good speakers, and then a rangatahi speaker at the end, who just said, basically, we all know we're in great pain. We all know we're being absolutely dumped on. We all know that what's happening to us, we're being vilified, we're being demonized, we're being marginalized. We know that. But we've got to do something about it. We've got to recognize what's happening to us and do something about it. Now, please go to your workshops and find solutions for us. And so it gave a very positive, it laid a very positive framework for within which to work. And then I managed to get to a couple of the workshops. I had others going around to the other workshops, all very positive, acknowledging that we were being really badly dumped on, but that we had the power amongst us to change that. And from where I'm coming from, that is about constitutional transformation.
Right.
It's about Māori taking back control of our lives, stopping interference coming in from those who really don't know what it is to be Māori and to live in your whānau, in your hapu, fight for your lands, fight for your well-being, and fight for your existence. But we do. And because we do know that, then, hey, we know what works and what doesn't work for us, and we just want to be given the freedom to, hey, make our own mistakes, for heaven's sake, instead of having everybody else make our mistakes and then get us to wear them.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you can, bear with a couple of thickos here for a second and go...
Nobody's thick.
We're being educated by lots of people. Moana Tufari's been on, Deb Narawa Paka's been on, talking about this. And could you take a half step backwards? Because we're being told by a certain sector of society, i.e. probably those in power right now, in government right now, what the treaty is all about and what it should be looked like in the city, in the country. Could you just give us a bit of a, whether it's the elevator pitch or not, as to what the treaty was when it was signed, and how we're trying to be, and I'll use the word conned, as to what the treaty is today and the disparity potentially between the two?
Sure. Okay. And I have to say, it's not just you guys who don't know this. There's a whole lot of Māori as well as Pākehā who don't know this stuff. Okay, so when you're talking about the treaty, you have to take a step back 5 years to 1835, where you had a declaration issued. It's called He Hakaputanga. You'll hear, especially those of us in the north, we always talk about this because we are the guardians of it, especially from around Waitangi. And that was a declaration that was issued because of the way that people at Kororareka, that's Russell, were just running amok. And it was the advice of the British resident to issue effectively a constitutional document that said, this is where power lays, this is how you make the decisions. And what that document said was that the ultimate power and authority in this country lay with the rangatira of the hapu. And they would never, ever devolve power because they were the sole ones who had lawmaking powers. And we made laws under our own legal system, that's tikanga. So we would never devolve that power. Acknowledged that the British were there, did say that we needed a bit of help, but that was the constitutional basis of this country. Move on 5 years, that lot at Kororareka still weren't listening, still weren't doing what they're supposed to do. And so the rangatira by that stage are pretty fed up. And they're going, come on, you English people, please keep control of your people. We don't want to have responsibility for them anymore. Please take it. And so the Queen of England agreed that she would take responsibility for her Pākehā, what we call Pākehā, but the British immigrants who are coming in here, the ones who are here already and those yet to come, she would make sure that they stop their lawlessness. And that's quite clear in Te Tiriti. So that is what Te Tiriti did. It confirmed He Hakaputanga, so it confirmed where power and authority lay in the country, so that didn't change. What did change was responsibility for lawless Pākehās, and that would go to the Queen of England. And she was given that, and it was called, the missionaries called it kāwanatanga. Now, for 20 odd years, I've been struggling to get an accurate translation of kāwanatanga. It often gets translated as governance because it's taken from the word kāwana. And kāwana is a transliteration of governor. But governance is not what the rangatira gave to the Queen of England. What they gave her was the right to keep control of her Pākehā citizens. That's
Right.
what she was given. Hey, my latest attempt at it is the controlling mechanism that she needed, whatever. But it sure wasn't governance over the whole country. And it sure wasn't governance or any authority over Māori. Why would we need it? The country was ours. There were several 100,000 of us. Maybe a small percentage of Pākehās running amok at Russell, and you give everything to them or their boss.
Yeah.
It's just
Doesn't make any sense.
So, and that's what Te Tiriti was about. Now, you do get that English thing that I will only ever refer to as a draft, because this was one that Hobson drafted up with his colleagues in there, and it was pretty clear that what they were wanting was not, first of all, it wasn't the instructions they were getting from England, from London, but they wanted to take over the country. Now, that would have been effectively a declaration of war. And because there is no way in the world that Rangatira were going to do that. And the missionaries knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the missionaries, when they were given that English language draft to translate, did not translate any cession of sovereignty, because that's what the English one says, was that the Rangatira cede their sovereignty. Well, the missionaries left that out. And however, it wasn't quite as simple as that, because a lot of Pākehā who were there at the signing knew what Hobson and his mates wanted and kept demanding that the missionaries explain that, remembering the practical realities on the ground. This was Aotearoa at that stage. It was a Māori country. The language of communication was Māori. It wasn't English. And these Rangatira didn't speak English at all. But you had the few Pākehās who were there going butcher's hooks at the missionaries because they would not tell Māori that really what these guys in their fancy clothes and what have you wanted to do was take over the country. Wouldn't tell them. And so the Rangatira, because they'd already picked this up, they deliberately questioned the missionaries and said, have you come here to take over our country, steal our land, da-da-da-da? And the missionaries said, no, that is not what this treaty is. Read the treaty. It has nothing in there about that. All it does is confirm he hakaputanga and give responsibility for those lawless people over there to the Queen of England.
Can I ask a really dumb question? A really, really dumb question. Did the chiefs sign the Māori version, Te Tiriti, or did they sign the English version?
They signed the Māori one because that's the one that was read to them.
So why are we even talking about the English one? That's not the signed contract.
Exactly. And that's why I have said it's a draft only. It never made it through to, the signing. Now, you need to be careful about that, because in Waikato Heads and in the Manukau, the English draft did make it down there. I think it went because it was going with missionaries, and so missionaries were given the English draft, but they were also given the Māori one because they had to read the Māori one. It was useless. It was pointless trying to read out the English one. Nobody understood it. Yeah. So they read out the Māori one, and then I don't know whether it's because they ran out of space on it, but the missionary there, his name was Monsell, he said to them, I have here the English of it, which you don't understand, but I can assure you it means exactly the same, so it's okay for you to sign it.
Right.
So 37 Rangatira signed it there on the assurance that it was exactly the same as the other. Now, I don't know whether Monsell's Māori was just not good enough for him to understand that there was a major difference between the two, or what it was. But what the descendants say is that Monsell was a person they trusted and had no reason to believe that he would have lied to them, basically. Yeah. And I don't know that he necessarily lied. either. I just don't think his language was good enough.
Yeah, I was
These are
just
really-
thinking that's something that people do on trust, right?
Yeah.
The established relationship.
There's actually a really good book called Bible and Treaty by Keith Newman, which talks a lot about this. And Chewy, so, you know, Keith is who we had on last week talking about Ratana Revisited. So it's quite an interesting read. Sorry, Chewy, you want to jump in? You got some questions?
No, I was just saying, yeah, it does sound, you know, I think that's something that's often overlooked is the relationship between Māori and Europeans pre-treaty and pre-major waves of colonization as well. Like down here in Otago, there's many stories of intermarriage and relations and trade between sealing parties and whaling parties and that sort of, way before there was any sort of formal settlement in this area. And of course, people that were coming in here and doing those sort of jobs and being missionaries and that sort of thing, of course you would speak the language of the people that were already here. That was the language of trade. That was the language of agreement and that sort of thing. So it makes sense that the treaty that was signed, the treaty that was negotiated, was in Māori. And I find it really interesting as someone that's in his early 40s, right? Is it's only really been recently that it's come up, this conversation about the two versions, the original and the translation. And I think this just shows that there needs to be more discussion about what is in a lot of cases the founding myth of this country, of what the treaty is, because there's a lot of misunderstanding just because it hasn't been taught properly, hasn't been discussed.
And that's, well, it's our job in the universities to make sure that it does get taught, but we don't get as many students, I guess, as I would like to have. So, and what I do say to my students about this is just think of the practical realities back there in 1840, when, you know, this country was Māori through and through and completely under the control of Māori. Why would they do anything as crazy as what
that's what I
people
keep
said
coming
they did?
back to, is it makes absolutely no sense. And it doesn't matter if it's a cultural thing, it's just from a human point of view. No one would just give away everything.
Yeah, you give away who you are, you give away the control of your country, give away the control of your lives. Come on.
But it's just people not being critical or being dishonest. I like to simplify things. I'm a fairly simple person, Margaret. And I'm like, let's say I owned a subdivision and I was selling it off, and I had 40 sections in the subdivision and I owned them all because I was selling them off, and someone came in and bought one, right? They're not all of a sudden going to be the ones in charge, are they? Because I still own 39 of them. The one's not going to be making all the rules. It's the 39. How can we think it would have been any different in 1840?
And that's exactly it. It's the practical realities. But of course, what happened after that is that a whole lot more like the ones running amok in Kororareka came here and literally ran amok everywhere and promulgated these myths about, now, we'll give you some land. So this is my own tupuna. Yes, you've got nowhere to stay. You're as poor as hell. You go and stay over there and we'll help you build a house, and that's okay. And then that person, after the treaty is signed, claims that he was given 2,000 acres of land. And it's as simple as that. And they kept doing that and kept doing that. And after they'd done it, they had to justify what they'd done. So they built these myths. And one of the myths, of course, was that we had ceded sovereignty. And therefore, what these people were doing, running amok, stealing all of our land, stealing our resources, and then just totally dispossessing us, somehow or other became okay and became the norm. It just defies logic completely, but that's what they did. And it's a bit like David Seymour now, you know, if I keep saying these things and keep saying these things, then maybe they'll come true. Sorry, David Seymour, it don't work like that.
Well, this has brought us to the part of the conversation I guess we can talk to the today. I mean, David Seymour is telling the nation that this referendum will unite us. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not quite sure what he's going to unite, because what he's trying to do, when the media kindly sent me the leaked document, and I had a look at his bill that he proposes. Well, you're not allowed to be Māori anymore in this country, and you have to all be New Zealanders. And by the way, I'll lift out this phrase and that phrase and mistranslate it, and that will become what this country is. So you're only ever New Zealanders. Now, if he thinks that that's not being insulting and divisive, I don't know what he thinks it is. So what he's doing at the moment is he is trying to divide New Zealand by saying there are no Māori in this country, and therefore you Māori just be quiet because you're only New Zealanders. If that isn't poking a bear, I don't know what is poking a bear.
I'll just show people, we have talked about this, but just to revisit it, one of the big parts that you're talking about is that the New Zealand government will honour all New Zealanders in the chieftainship of their land and property rights. So he's making the relationship between the Crown and all New Zealanders as opposed to between the Crown and iwi. And that brings me to another question. We heard today that Mr. Luxon and Mr. Seymour are in kind of different places on this. Mr. Luxon in the media scrum was asked about how he thought the relationship via the treaty was, and this is what he said.
Different views expressed within the government, personal views on whether you see the treaty as a partnership. Can I ask for your personal view?
Yeah, look, my personal view is that it's a relationship between Crown and iwi. It's akin to a partnership, and you know, as we've been working through over a number of decades and years, we'll continue to work through that.
So you feel comfortable using that? You disagree with David Seymour?
Well, personally, that's how I think about it. Yeah.
So you do disagree with the way that David Seymour is?
As I said, I see it as a relationship between Crown and iwi, and I see it akin to a partnership, which is what many have seen over the last decade.
And that obviously continues on for another 3 or 4 minutes, where him saying exactly the same line over and over again. But he does state very clearly the Crown and iwi, whereas David Seymour is saying the Crown and New Zealanders. So I don't know what's going to happen and whether it will go beyond the first reading, but if Luxon was to stick to what he thought, then he can't support it. What do you think about the disparity between the two?
Oh, well, they're totally different, because Seymour, having listened to him quite by fluke, I have to say, on Sunday, but my academic side of me tells me I have to listen to everyone. So I went back and listened to it very, very carefully. He is quite clear that everybody is only a New Zealander, and you do not identify yourself by your, well, he talked about identity not being allowed to have a say in this. But essentially what he was saying was, you will forget that you have whakapapa, you will forget that you are Māori, and that there is no such thing as a partnership between Māori and the Crown, or rangatira and the Crown. He's really, really clear about that cannot happen. So what you've just seen, well, I hadn't realised that Luxon had said that, is exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Of what Seymour is saying, exactly the opposite.
Yeah. So that'll make the one thing we've been worried about, Margaret, and you know, I haven't heard this in the media yet, is Luxon could actually go, no, National's not supporting this, but we'll make it a conscience vote, and then National's not supporting it. No one's. That's not an accusation that we're the only ones that have been talking about that, but it was just a thought. Look, my last question. So, I mean, now you correct me anything that I say that's wrong, but it seems to me that the relationship between the Crown and Māori at the moment is more toxic than I've ever seen in my lifetime. Maybe it's right. Maybe that's right or wrong. If it is, who is the spearhead of the problem, do you think? Is it Luxon? Because he's the Prime Minister. Without him, nothing happens. Or is it Seymour? Or is it Winston Peters? Or is it the three-headed taniwhara, as we heard described the other day? Where's who has ultimate responsibility for the vibe, for the feelings that New Zealanders are having at the moment around this debate?
Well, I think the key instigators of it were definitely David Seymour, Winston Peters, and alongside him, Shane Jones. However, responsibility ultimately lies with Chris Luxon.
Yeah.
It's his job to sort it out. And that is definitely the approach that National Iwi Chairs Forum will take, because we do try to work very closely with governments. I have to say that the National Party part of this three-headed whatever is still open to coming and talking to us. You know, after the results of the election and all the nastiness that was being tossed at Maori, I would have thought they wouldn't have come and talked to us, but they did. And they have been far more open, but that's just the National Party side. I have to say there has been no approach from the other two to talk to us. Maybe we'll see them. We've got National Iwi Chairs Forum this week at Waitangi. Maybe we'll see some of them on Friday. I'm not sure.
It's been fantastic for you to come on tonight. Thank you so much. Chewy, if you've got anything else you want to add in, you can. But just before you go, Margaret, I want to put up a super chat that was had from JC because it's lovely. JC says, can we send Margaret door to door for cups of tea in Epsom, talk some sense into the muck rakers? I'm assuming it's for a thing for the super chat, JC. We appreciate that. So, yeah, I'm done. Chewy, do you have anything you want to wrap on, Chewy?
I just have one question. There's a lot of talk with people that watch our show and that sort of thing about what the best, what in your opinion, what's the most effective way the Pākehā can support Māori in this fight so that they don't feel like they're doing it all by themselves?
Good question.
Oh, thank you very much for that question.
Great question.
Because it's one of the things, my Ngāti Kahu, so I'm the chair of Ngāti Kahu way up in the far north. And I've asked them what instructions that I could take to Tūranga Waiwai. And one of them was that we ask our Tauiwi allies, which includes our Pākehā allies, if they could please come and help us by being a buffer between us and the Crown. And challenge the government, challenge the Crown, because if you can see what's happening to us, for heaven's sake, instead of us having to say it, because they don't listen to us, instead of us having to say it, would you please say it?
Margaret, I think you've just written the what do they call it? Like the dream board for this show and what we're trying to do. So is that what it's called? The vision board, the whatever it's called anyway. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Margaret. Thank you for joining us live as well. People are able to watch and participate. People in the chat, you're going bananas in a good way. We're sorry we didn't get to all your chats, but we'll talk to you guys once Margaret's gone. So thank you so much. And we hope we can have you back on again sometime. This has been amazing. We've all learnt. And I just want to say thank you from us for you coming on.
Kia ora.
All right, team, that's us. We'll be back again 9 o'clock tomorrow night for a live edition again of Big Hearing News. Thanks for being with us tonight. And as we wrap up, I just want to probably say again, thanks to all of our patrons. If you're a part of what we do, every little $5 bit genuinely does help. We've got approaching between 250 and 300 patrons. So it's really, really appreciative. And your little bit added together, bringing your givings to the storehouse, so to speak, really does enable us to do what we do, pay for a little bit of our time and actually continue to do this as well. You might consider you want to be a patron. If you want to be a patron, then you can head to patreon.com/Big Hearing News. And what happens after that is you get a chance to become a part of our credits. And because this is a pre-recorded show to wrap up, I will just say good night to you as the credits play out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hearing News. And thanks to all of our patrons who are about to show on our credits. Hooroo.
And sure, pick up the news, big hairy style, keeping it loose. News feeders, where the politics play, they bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time. voice. Hadn't you, they'll make the right choice.